Alrighty, so Claudia's coming in, and a little bit later on, and we're going to talk about short sales. But in the meantime, man, we are just been doing nothing. Well, I'm not going to say doing nothing. I mean, well, we don't do anything, but at least Nick doesn't do anything. But this is
Where are
the
we
time.
headed?
I don't know. But this is the time of year, Todd, where we see a lot of different business planning classes. And it's always a good reminder. Every agent should find one to attend, especially if you're a new agent. I think one of the areas that we get, I don't know, a little where we're not connected is we are, as real estate agents, we are real estate entrepreneurs, we are the CEOs of our own business, and there's no business out there that I can think of that starts their business without a business plan except for real estate agents.
Right.
And so it's imperative. But for many of us that have been in the business for years, this is the time that we kind of go revisit our business plans, and or we may have been in the business for a couple of years and have not put together our business plans. And so I've come up with three questions, and these are the three questions that I go through annually before I review my business plan. And because these are kind of the foundational questions, because if you can answer these questions, then when you go into a business planning class or begin to sit down and build your business plan, it will help you exponentially. So the first one.
Hold on, before you get going, because we're going to start seeing people drop off, because usually when we start talking about business planning, agents leave because they go, I have my business plan, I'm good. You said it. If you're not checking your business plan annually, if you're not projecting with what next year's market and economy is going to look like, and you're not trying to pivot your plan to match that, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, and to that same point, if you're doing less than 10 units a year, the need for business planning is there, but it's not as important as the person who's doing 100 deals a year, 80 deals a year. Business planning is so much more important for the experienced, multiple high-producing agents than it is really for the entry level. There's a lot of statistical information that can help them find themselves and their own secret sauce. But once you have found your secret sauce, now you're out there and you're strategizing for next year, and you're hitting huge numbers: 30 million, 50 million, 80 million. I'm not sure. Mike and I don't share these slides before the podcast, but I'm telling you, you need to have not only a business plan, but maybe update your action plan.
Yeah, and if this bores you and you feel like you should check
There's your
out,
sign.
and then you find yourself looking for a job come January, don't come calling, don't come complaining. We're here to help you. First one, I think it's something that's important that we do every single year is review what worked and what didn't. We kind of go into business plans. We might have an idea of what's working and what's not working, but we're not actually tracking numbers. And so what we do, our team does, we do towards the end of the year is we go through every single one of our closings and we leverage our CRM system to determine where each closing came from. Because I don't want to double down on something that is not producing, and then if something is producing for me, then that may be what I want to double down. So take a look at all your closings. If you don't have a lot of closings, take a look at your pipeline, the people that you're actually working with, and determine where these people came from. And as you go through it, identify which lead sources generated the most income and which ones didn't. And so now you've got two columns. You're going into a business plan meeting knowing, okay, this is what's working. This is what's not working, and then spend some time considering. For the lead sources that are working, then why are they working? What are you doing to bring in leads? And the ones that aren't, figure out why they're not. And then again, if you're a newer agent though, and you don't have a lot of history in this, rather than just copycat what every other agent is doing and what people are telling you to do, find some top producers to sit down. Find a coach in the office to sit down, and and we get them. We see them every single month on the Facebook group. Who are the top 10 agents in each office, and who are the top 25 throughout the company? And oftentimes you'll see a lot of repeats. Well, to your line, Todd, there's your sign.
There's your sign.
If they're constantly on that top 10 list, See if you can't spend some time going out with them and find out, what's working for you. I'm new and I don't want to waste time. What's working for you?
I always say the person that you're competing with is the person you look at in the mirror. That's the person, because whether you go to work or not every day, that's what stimulates. There is no other assistance that you have. You look in the mirror and okay, well, if there's an agent out there and they're successful with one particular lead generation activity, that person may have a totally different behavioral statistic than you do, and you need to do you. What's that commercial? You do you. That's what you really need to do. So what worked and what didn't work, make sure you're looking in the mirror at the same time. Make sure you're saying, did I give that all? Because remember, statistics means there are people that did less than that number, that average number, and there are people that did and crushed it way beyond that number to get that average. But in the end, when you're looking at whether you're brand new or not, what do I personally bring to the table? Where can I personally improve myself along this way? So, but to Mike's point, you have to know what you did last year. And if you haven't been in the business long enough to know last year, because history leaves clues, right? At least look at last year. Look at what you personally did last year. What did you succeed at? What kind of activities did you enjoy doing, and which kind of activities did you not? Because I'm going to tell you, even though there's an activity that may have better results, if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to do it. You're going to be average or below, not above.
Yeah, you'll hide from it.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we see a huge fall down when it comes to real estate agents, because this is their business, is the trackable aspect of everything that they're doing. If you have a hard time looking back at your lead sources to figure out where the leads, the closings came from, you're not tracking it. And if you're not tracking it, you can't make it better. You can't see that you were better 1 month than the other, 1 year from the other. You have to start putting in trackable metrics, trackable data. And it's not that difficult. It just takes some time. And most agents again, that's the thing they hide from. So making it a priority as you're analyzing the last 12 months. And to the points already made, if you're brand new, if you've been in business for a day or a couple of months, talk to those top producers. That you need to have conversations. So you need to find ways to get people to engage with you. Open houses, events, door knocking, farming, cold calling. Those are things you need to start doing, because you need to start having conversations to generate that business.
All right, number 2. So how much did I spend on these lead sources, and how much do I have allocated for 2025? Obviously, I feel like it's obvious just sitting on this side of the microphone. One of our weaknesses as agents as a whole is we just don't necessarily do a great job at budgeting. We get our real estate licenses. We don't really know how much we have allocated to start our business. And then when we start our business, we get hit with all the emails and ads and the bells and whistles, and we spend money here and we spend money there and so forth. So one of the main aspects of putting together a business plan is really developing a budget. And I don't necessarily want to get into budgeting right now, but when I go back and take a look at what worked and what didn't, I want to be able to identify how much money I've spent on each lead source, and then I can see the balance. Did I spend a ton more money on lead sources that aren't working as opposed to the ones that are working, or vice versa? And if I've spent all this money on lead sources that aren't working, and I've said to myself, this lead source, I probably maybe need to just get rid of this lead source or dial it back down, then how much money does that leave me for the lead sources that are working? So identify how much money you need to increase your spending on the lead sources that are working. I always say double down. When I get to the end of the year, and I pretty much know. I've been doing this long enough. I know my top 3 lead sources, and they are what they are. But at some point, I had to say, okay, well, these are doing really, really well for me, so I got to double down on it, not only financially but with my time. And then, how much money can I allocate elsewhere? If I can, if I can cut some of the unsuccessful lead sources. And it's not just money, Todd. It's also time.
You took the words out of my mouth.
The money is one thing, because there are lead sources like, door knocking. Door knocking is an incredible lead source, but I'm just going to be up front. It's not necessarily for everyone. Not everyone likes door knocking. Not everyone can do a good job at door knocking, but yet it consumes so much time, but doesn't cost a lot of money.
You know, again, I'm going to go back to the mirror concept, which is just as simple as this. Everybody has a behavioral assessment. Go to WestUSA with a C, DISC.com, and take it. It's free for you. You might get one phone call from Tony Robbins' organization just telling them you don't want to join their coaching. But
Oh, Tone calls me directly now.
well,
Yeah.
So it tells you not to use the site anymore. No, but what I'm trying to say here is once you know yourself, you'll know. Door knocking is not for an S or C, high S or high C. You know, they're great for drivers. They're great for influencers, people that wake up every morning and have to go meet people because they got to meet new friends constantly. But without going down a rabbit hole here, the objective really is if you don't know what that lead generation activity should provide you with. And this is not an individual thing. This is a company that you're paying to generate, maybe your leads from. If they should be able to give you proper metrics on what their data is doing, what's really funny is when they lie to you, you see it, because the reality is that they're going to always puff and tell you that they're doing more. I mean, how does a zip code that's in a fantastic zip code location become available? It's just ignorance. It's the sales sizzle. To Mike's and to Mindy's, perspective, it's the fear of missing out. They oversell you they make it overzealous to want to participate in those. But again, it's if you don't know what those lead generation activities are supposed to provide you with, it's difficult to see how much money to really put into them. But once you've decided for yourself what it is that you like doing, and if you do have a history of spending money on that, then you can tailor those and put the money where your mouth is.
And I would say that the focus for me here would be what systems have I set up to make these lead sources that I'm paying for successful. If you've got bad lead sources, quote unquote, if you've got things you've put money into that have not turned into closings, what systems do you have set up before the lead comes in? And if you don't have one, and if you haven't put time into figuring out what your system should be depending upon the lead source, that could be why the lead source is quote unquote bad. So you need to be, again, with time, focusing on what to do when the leads come in, when someone does call, when someone does engage with you, before you can really tell someone that the lead source is bad or good.
And that's what I would use Keith Flynn for, because Keith can help you with setting up some AIs even that can help filter some of that out.
Yeah, and you should be able to, at any given time, I should be able to go up to anyone and say, okay, what are your top 3 lead sources?
Correct.
Bingo.
And you should be able to answer the question, and I know my top 4, because,
Fancy.
and I have 4 that work for me, but, I've been doing this 20 some odd years, and it's been a lot of trial and error, but it keeps me from going down other rabbit holes of trying this and trying that, because I don't need to try it, because I know what works, and I'm not gonna say perfected it. I don't think we ever perfect anything, but we've gotten pretty dang good at them.
Well, I think it helps keep you away from sticking to something that used to work that isn't working anymore. You're not putting emotion into it. You're using rational data analytics and thought to move from one to the other when it does dry up.
Mic drop.
All right, so what new ideas am I thinking of? So before I walk into a business planning meeting, what am I thinking of adding? I've been watching, there's a couple things I've been watching agents do over 2024 that I've done a little homework, done a little research on, and considering doing. And so now, as I put together my plan for 2025, I'm gonna sit down and go, okay, do these have any merit, and do I want to add something to my business plan? But I would say this, because I know we talked a lot about cutting lead source. But before you cut a lead source out, consider if there's any adjustments you can make. I know that there's agents that say open houses work, and other agents say open houses don't work and are a waste of time. Oftentimes, the latter just isn't doing them right, or don't have the proper tools and so forth. So I would just say, if you were excited about a lead source and you saw some hope, and maybe you did get a few leads here before you outright cut it, are there any adjustments? And again, especially if you're new or newer, identify what other agents are doing to be successful. Don't just look at every single agent, but look at the agents that are producing, and then just start making a list of ideas that I'm considering. These are a couple different lead sources or different a couple different activities that I'm thinking about adding to my marketing strategies. I'm going to build a little plan around them. How am I going to do it? Who's this going to target? What are my projections? But I'm also going to identify the costs. And I should put time as well. How much time is this going to take me, and how much money is this going to take me? And do I have the money for it?
Well, and I think we defined the word cost earlier or expense earlier when we were talking about both dollars and time, because time is the thing that Time Bank quote I've heard many years ago, was it was 83,600 seconds in a day. And so if you've got that, what are you doing with it versus what somebody else is doing with it? Because what somebody else is doing, they've identified their own personal secret sauce, what they like, what they do, and they're much more effective at doing it because they've done that already. Mike, to your point, we've known each other for decades, and you've done that. You've always done that, and that's what has really helped you identify where to put the effort and the time. And then, of course, if you have the statistics on what it should do, these are all important attributes. Identifying what other agents are doing, I'm always cautious of a distraction. And high drivers and high influencers, which means the top 20% of all realtors and really all people in America, are easily distracted. I think they call that the squirrel phase, where somebody comes up and all of a sudden something attracts them. Well, anytime somebody tells you that they're doing something and they're achieving success with it, and you're doing whatever you're doing and you're not achieving success with it, then what happens is you have a tendency to cut that lead source too fast and reallocate those dollars before you've given it time enough and you've learned enough to understand what all those attributes are.
But I would say if that squirrel is fat, that squirrel's eating.
Stop.
No, I'm just saying that squirrel's eating, and so I'm gonna check out what that squirrel is doing.
If you were a squirrel and you saw another squirrel that was fat, maybe so, but work on it.
I think both points are super valid, and I do see agents like to squirrel one after another because they see one agent successful and they try that tactic for a couple of weeks, and they see another agent successful and they try that tactic for a couple of weeks. What you will see, what you will hear when you speak to top producers is consistency, not perfection, not trying to take what other people are doing. They're consistent with their marketing, consistent with their branding, consistent with what they are doing daily, and that will allow success over time.
Absolutely.
All right, I think I'm going to elaborate this on next week. So next week's podcast, our 3-pack. So I'm considering a
Next
new
week is
lead
Veterans
source
Day per your really
in 2
fancy
weeks.
slide.
In 2 weeks, what do I do? So I got a new lead source or a new idea.
Love that.
How do I walk myself through it to
Oh,
figure
that's
out whether
brilliant.
I want to take that next step?